The town of Red Creek had two kinds of people, those who owned land and those who worked it. Caleb Morgan had inherited 40 acres from his father, a stretch of valley land that sat at the mouth of the canyon, and he had spent 10 years making it into something worth keeping. He had built his house with his own hands, dug his well with his own back, and learned to sleep with one eye open because Silas Grant, the richest man in the territory, wanted his land and had made it clear he would stop at nothing to get it. Caleb had refused every offer, every threat, every warning. He was alone, but he was not afraid. He found her on a night when the moon was hidden and the wind was screaming. She was lying at the edge of his property, curled against a fence post, her dress torn, her hands bleeding, her face a mask of cuts and bruises. He dismounted and knelt beside her, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were wild with fear, the eyes of an animal that had been hunted too long and had given up running. "They're coming," she whispered. "They'll kill me if they find me." He lifted her onto his horse without a word and brought her home. He learned her name was Elena, and he learned that she had been a singer at the saloon in Red Creek, that she had been Silas Grant's woman for a time, and that when she had tried to leave, he had beaten her and thrown her out. He learned that Grant had told the town she was a thief, a liar, a woman of ill repute, and that no one in Red Creek would give her shelter. He learned that she had walked 20 miles through the snow, bleeding from wounds he could not see, because the only thing worse than freezing to death was staying in a place where Silas Grant's word was law. He gave her his bed, his food, his silence. He asked nothing from her, not her story, not her gratitude, not her body. He slept by the fire, the same way he had slept for 10 years, alone and watchful. In the mornings, he left her bread and coffee and went out to work his land. She did not speak to him for 3 days, and he did not push. He had learned in the years since his father died that some wounds could only heal in silence, and that the best thing a man could offer another was the space to breathe. On the 4th morning, she came out to the barn. He was mending a harness, his hands working the leather, and she stood in the doorway watching him. She was thinner than he had thought, her face still marked with bruises, her arms crossed over her chest as if holding herself together. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He looked at her, then back at his work. "Because you needed it." She laughed, a bitter sound. No one helps anyone because they need it. They help because they want something. He set down the harness and looked at her. "I don't want anything from you." She stayed. She did not say she would, and he did not ask her to. She simply stopped leaving, and he stopped expecting her to. She learned to cook his mother's recipes, the ones he had kept in a box under the bed. She learned to ride his horses, to mend his fences, to sit beside him in the evenings without needing to fill the silence with words. The town of Red Creek did not know she was there, and Caleb intended to keep it that way. But Silas Grant had eyes everywhere, and it was only a matter of time before he learned that the woman who had escaped him was living on the land he had been trying to steal for a decade. The first time she touched him, it was by accident. He had come in from the cold, his hands numb, his face chapped, and she had reached out to take his coat from his shoulders. Her fingers brushed his neck, and he froze. The touch was nothing, a simple gesture, but he had not been touched by another person in so long he had forgotten what it felt like. She noticed. She pulled her hand back quickly, her face flushing, and turned away. He stood there, his coat half off, his heart pounding, and he understood in that moment that he was no longer protecting her. He was protecting himself from what he was beginning to feel. The weeks passed. The snow melted, and the passes opened, and the men from Red Creek began to come. They came first as scouts, riding the boundaries of his land, testing his fences, watching his house. Caleb knew they were Grant's men, and he knew what they were looking for. He kept Elena inside during the day, kept her out of sight, but the cabin was small, and there was only so much hiding a person could do. She knew what was coming. She had known since the night he found her. "I should leave," she said one evening. He looked at her, and his voice was harder than he intended. No. Grant came himself on a morning when the sky was low and the air was thick with rain. He rode up with 6 men behind him, his horse prancing, his coat clean, his hat straight. He did not dismount. He sat at the gate, looking at Caleb's house, his barn, his fields, with the eyes of a man measuring what he would soon own. Caleb met him at the fence, his hands loose at his sides, his face calm. "You're on my land," he said. Grant smiled. "I'm on land that should be mine, and I'm here to collect what belongs to me." Elena was at the window, watching, her face pale, her hands pressed against the glass. Grant saw her, and his smile widened. "There she is, my runaway. I've been looking for her, Morgan. She stole from me. She's a thief and a whore, and I'm taking her back." Caleb did not turn around. He did not look at the men behind Grant, did not count their guns, did not weigh his chances. He looked at Grant, and his voice was quiet. "She's not going anywhere with you." Grant's face hardened. "You want to die for a woman you found in a ditch?" Caleb did not answer. He stood at the fence, his hands still loose, his posture relaxed, and he waited. Grant stared at him for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted, not fear, but calculation. He did not want to fight. Not yet. He wanted land, and land could be taken slowly, piece by piece, by law and by leverage. He turned his horse and rode away, his men following, and Caleb watched them go until they disappeared over the ridge. Then he went inside, and he found Elena standing in the center of the room, shaking. "He'll come back," she said. "He won't stop." "He never stops." Caleb took her hands, stilling them, and she looked up at him with eyes that were wet with tears she was too proud to shed. "Then we'll be ready," he said. She shook her head. "You don't understand. He owns the sheriff. He owns the judge. He owns everyone in that town. There's no one who will stand against him." Caleb looked at her, and for the first time since she had known him, he smiled. "Then we'll stand alone." The days that followed were a slow war. Grant's men came at night, cutting fences, poisoning wells, setting fires in the fields. Caleb fought back with what he had, a rifle, a will of iron, a knowledge of his land that no hired man could match. He ran them off, repaired what they broke, and waited for the next attack. Elena fought beside him. She learned to shoot, to track, to move through the darkness without sound. She became something she had never been before. Not a victim, not a survivor, but a fighter. The night before the final attack, they sat together in the darkness, the fire low, the cabin cold. They knew what was coming. Grant had run out of patience. He was coming with every man he could hire, and he was coming to finish what he had started. Caleb sat with his rifle across his knees, his hands steady, his face calm. Elena sat beside him, her shoulder against his, her breathing slow. "You could leave," he said quietly. "Take the horse, ride north. He won't follow you if you go far enough." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were the same eyes she had worn the night he found her in the snow wild. Desperate, but no longer afraid. "I'm not leaving you." He shook his head. "Elena." She reached up and put her fingers against his lips, silencing him. "I spent my whole life running from men like him. I ran from my father. I ran from the men who bought me. I ran from Grant. I'm not running anymore." She looked at him, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm staying with you. Whatever happens." He stared at her, and the walls he had built around himself, the walls he had spent 10 years constructing, began to crack. He had told himself he was protecting her. He had told himself he was being noble. But standing there, with her hand on his face and her eyes on his, he knew the truth. He had been hiding from her the same way he had been hiding from everything, from the life he could have, the man he could be, the possibility that he might deserve something more than solitude. "I don't know how to do this," he said. She smiled. "Neither do I, but we can figure it out together." Grant came at dawn, 20 men with guns and torches, riding up the valley like an army. Caleb was waiting on the porch, Elena beside him, his rifle across his lap, her hand in his. Grant reined in at the gate, his face twisted with rage, his men spreading out behind him. "Last chance, Morgan. Give me the land. Give me the woman, and I'll let you walk away." Caleb stood slowly, Elena rising with him, and for a moment, the two of them faced the army alone. Then Caleb raised his rifle, and Elena raised hers, and they fired together. The battle was short and brutal. Grant's men had numbers, but Caleb had something they did not, a reason to fight. He knew every rock, every tree, every dip in the ground where a man could find cover. He moved through his land like a ghost, Elena at his back, and one by one, Grant's men fell. Some fled, some surrendered, some stayed and fought until they could fight no more. Grant himself was the last, standing in the yard, his horse dead beneath him, his gun empty, his face white with fear and fury. Caleb walked toward him, his rifle raised, his face calm. Grant looked at him, and for the first time, the arrogance was gone. "You'll hang for this," he spat. "You think the law will let you get away with killing my men?" Caleb stopped in front of him, and his voice was low. "The law is coming, Grant. The marshal from Cheyenne is already on his way. Your men are talking. They've told us about the land you stole, the men you killed, the women you used. You're not going to hang for this. You're going to hang for everything." They took Grant away that afternoon, the marshal arriving just as Caleb had promised, the truth coming out in a flood of confessions and accusations. The town of Red Creek did not know what to do with itself. The man who had owned them was gone, and the man they had ignored was suddenly the only one who had stood against him. Caleb did not care. He went back to his land, to his house, to the woman who was waiting on the porch. She stood when she saw him, her face breaking into a smile, and he crossed the yard and took her in his arms. The land was his. The fight was over. But what mattered, what had always mattered, was the woman who had walked 20 miles through the snow to find him, who had stayed when she could have run, who had fought beside him when the world turned against him. He held her there in the afternoon sun, and he knew that he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never had to run again. The sinner, they had called her, but she was not a sinner. She was his salvation, and he was never going to let her go.